Cerebrospinal fluid is composed of a watery solution. Now this gets filtered from blood plasma by ependymal cells. So it's got less protein and different ion concentrations than plasma, and it stays at a relatively constant volume. So the function of cerebrospinal fluid is basically to give buoyancy to central nervous system structures. It basically reduces their weight, so they don't have to hold their own weight. They don't have to support their own weight. So this buoyancy reduces their weight inside the skull by about 97%. It'll also protect the central nervous system from blows and other trauma. So the reason why it takes a relatively hard impact to knock you out is because of the cerebrospinal fluid. It also nourishes the brain and carries chemical signals. So it carries out some of the functions of the central nervous system, of the circulatory system. Now we're going to take a look at the formation, the location, and the circulation of cerebrospinal fluid. The first thing to tell you is that the choroid plexus of each ventricle will produce cerebrospinal fluid. And if you look at the orange colored structures, one of them is around the prominent number 1 in the middle of the diagram, you'll see the choroid plexus for the third ventricle. So just to give you a little bit of an orientation, what we're looking at here is the right lateral ventricle is deep to the cut here. So because this is a mid-sagittal section, you're not going to encounter any of the ventricles. So the third ventricle is going to be basically right in the middle, just below the number 1. The fourth ventricle is actually right here, about in this area right here. So it is actually sort of anterior to the cerebellum. And so the two lateral ventricles are the first two ventricles, then you have the third and the fourth one. There are choroid plexuses present in each ventricle, and they're going to produce CSF. Now, if you take a look at as I said, the orange colored structures, you'll see some red arrows coming out of them. And this is sort of my way of indicating that these actually produce cerebrospinal fluid. We'll see exactly how they do in a little bit. So the second thing to tell you is about the route of cerebrospinal fluid. It flows through the ventricles into the subarachnoid space via median and lateral apertures, and also flows through the subarachnoid space. So let's just take a look at the route of this through the brain. One thing I do want you to notice is that cerebrospinal fluid can also travel down the central canal of the spinal cord. Now finally, and last but certainly not least, where the green lines ended up are two of the arachnoid villi, and this is where cerebrospinal fluid gets absorbed back into the bloodstream.